What can happen if we encourage students to pray for their local schools and they actually do it? Could we see fighting stop, grades go up, and God move among the students, teachers, and faculty? On this episode of Student Ministry Connection, Aubrie Kimbrough from Claim Your Campus will share stories of transformation and some free resources that will change your students and change your local schools. Let's get ready to connect and grow. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection. My name is Steve Cullum. I've served in student ministry since around 1999, and I currently work as a missionary with National Network of Youth Ministries. Prayer is an interesting thing, isn't it? We get to talk to God. We have this direct line to Him where we can talk to Him and listen to Him. Yet I know many of us probably don't use it nearly as much as we should. And I wonder how many of our students are in similar places. While we probably teach them that they should pray, I'm guessing we could do a better job at showing them how to pray and actually praying more often. And maybe for some of us, the reason is either that we don't know many good resources to do that, or we haven't been inspired enough, because maybe we don't see prayer doing much sometimes. It's okay to think that if that's you. I've been there myself sometimes. Today's guest is someone who will hopefully take care of both of those things. Aubrie Kimbrough has seen firsthand how prayer has changed her life, others' lives, and especially changed schools. She works with an organization called Claim Your Campus, and she recently led one of the 10,000-mile tours where I got to meet her and her team in their stops in both Montana and Colorado. I'll let her tell you all about CYC, but do note that they will be sending out more teams in the future. So if you'd like them to stop by your youth group or network, please do reach out. Well, hey, Aubrie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for asking.
It's been great to get to know you over the last year or so and partner in a couple different places with Claim Your Campus. And I've got to hear a lot of your story over that time, which is always awesome to hear as you're sharing with different students and just all the different things that God has done in your life. But for the sake of our audience, but also I'd love to hear it again. What's your testimony? How did you start in your relationship with Jesus, and how did you get started in ministry? How did all this begin?
Yeah. So grew up in the church. I have only ever known church on Sundays from the time I was born. And my family was very heavily involved in kids' church at my church I grew up at. And it wasn't ever fully understood by me that Christianity, relationship with Jesus, is about what he's done for me and now what I do in response, and being filled with the Holy Spirit and walking that out, and the love of Christ. It was a lot of rules, and you do this and you live this way in order to get to heaven. And so I just never really had a lot of buy-in. I gave my life technically to the Lord when I was 5, but felt like the good Christian thing to do. I didn't fully know what I was saying yes to. And when I was in 6th grade, I went to a youth camp and I heard about Claim Your Campus. I was like, again, this feels like the good Christian thing to do. And so I started a prayer group on my middle school campus in 6th grade and didn't see a lot of things happen. I showed up and would pray every week and no one would show up with me, and didn't see things change, and kind of got to this point a few months in where I was like, well, what's the point? I've lost friends. I am not popular anymore. I am not invited to sit at the lunch table, and I'm not seeing the Lord do anything. So why do this? And it ended up kind of pushing me away from the Lord. Just didn't have the foundation to sustain what I was doing, and ended up running from the Lord for about 4 years. And my sophomore year of high school, I found myself in a really desperate place. I was putting on really good masks in front of people I needed to put masks on in front of, and in the background was depressed, anxious, suicidal, was struggling in addiction. And on March 20th, 2020 at 2 a.m., I cried out to the Lord, and he met me in my bedroom and gave my life to the Lord, and spent all of COVID as a sophomore in high school just falling in love with Jesus, reading the Bible, praying. Heard about Claim Your Campus again in that time. And my family was in a transition of moving cities. So I was going to start a new school my junior year. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this thing a try again. I was at this brand new campus and was seeing the brokenness on the school campus, and I was like, man, what if this could work? Like, what if prayer could actually change my school? And so I started praying and invited one other girl from my youth group to show up with me. I didn't have a lot of friends at this school. I was the girl who loved Jesus coming in junior year of high school, so naturally not a lot of friends. And started praying with her every single week in our gymnasium and prayed for a year, didn't see a lot of movement. And that summer, I felt the Lord invited us to do a worship night on our high school campus. And so we rented our football field and invited people to come. 200 students in the community showed up. We got to share the gospel, see them come to know Jesus. We got to baptize 30 of our peers that night on our high school football field. And it started this movement in our city of Claim Your Campus. Now, Claim Your Campus had been around for a while, but it wasn't super lively in Ohio, where I grew up. And so we saw this movement begin to spread across Ohio of students showing up to pray for their campuses. And as they were praying, there was something that stirred within them of, man, we have to actually do something about this. We need to start sharing the gospel. We need to do nights of worship and make sure our peers actually know who Jesus is. And so we were seeing crazy things happen on campuses because students were just praying. We were seeing healings happening in hallways, like physical healings happening. We were seeing students getting set free from addiction, students giving their lives to Jesus, vaping going down in schools. And it led to this point where I graduated high school. We were seeing all these things happen. And I got connected with Claim Your Campus's leadership, Olivia Williamson, and ended up taking a part-time job with them and working with them part-time. And through me working with them part-time, I actually came to find out that this K through 12 school where I started my sixth grade prayer group was experiencing answers to prayers. They had a prayer group of 20 students start. They were seeing students come to know Jesus. Vaping was going down in their school. Community of Christians was growing. And it was these direct prayers that I had prayed as a sixth grader. Now, 7 years later, the Lord was answering. And it was like this full circle moment for me of, man, even when I had no clue what I was doing, I didn't fully know what I believed about Jesus. He still heard my prayers. And where I thought he ignored me, he actually, in his timing and in his way, was now answering. And so it felt like this full circle moment for me of like, wow, like, yeah, you heard my prayers as a junior in high school, but you heard
Yeah.
the very little faith prayers of a sixth grader as well. And yeah, now I get to work with them and go call students to pray all across the country and watch the Lord do amazing things, specifically over the past 2 years, just witnessing young people really come alive and desire to know the Lord in prayer, which is something the Lord's really just marked my heart with, honestly, through my high school experience and my college experience and everything. Like the way that knowing how to pray from a young age and having that history with the Lord has changed my young adult life is astronomical. And it's something I desire for middle schoolers and high schoolers to know now that, hey, you can talk to the Lord and He desires to hear you and He desires to answer you. Because when they catch that at a young age, it changes everything. It makes their relationship with the Lord so real. And so it's why I do it now because it's like, man, I've seen it change my life. I saw prayer and the way the Lord uses prayer changed my school. And I would give anything for any little sixth grader to know that the Lord hears them and wants to use them right now where they're at.
Amen. Like I said, I've heard you share that so many times, and I get excited every time you share it because it's so cool of how God did work, and I know He can work through so many others, and He has worked through so many others students that we get to partner with in this. So before we jump into anything else, we're going to share a lot of stories and different ways that you can get involved and everything. But what is Claim Your Campus all about?
Yeah. So Claim Your Campus. Our mission is to call, train, and sustain 1 million middle and high schoolers praying in every middle and high school across the country. And the way we do that is encouraging students to start student-led prayer meetings on their campus. And so this is a different model than a club. It's not necessarily having a teacher advisor getting permission from the principal. It's literally, I'm going to show up before school, after school, or during lunch for 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to get in a circle in my cafeteria, in my gymnasium, in a hallway, and we're just going to pray together and intercede for our campuses and see what the Lord can do. And where nothing exists on a campus, we encourage students, hey, start a prayer group. We give them resources through our app that gives them the prayer guide for students to know how to pray and know how to intercede. I think it can be really easy to talk to the Lord about myself and about the things that I'm going through, but it's a whole other ball field to be like, how do I pray for an environment and people whose lives I don't really know what's going on? And so we want to teach students, yes, how to pray for things that are on their heart and going on in their life, but also how to intercede for the spaces they're in and the people that they're impacted by. And so we give students a prayer guide that teaches them how to actually intercede. And we know there's 1,000 different models for it, but the goal is to just give them this trellis and a place where they can cling to this and grow out of it, grow deeper into it, whatever that looks like, but to give students that those training wheels to feel confident in showing up, to feel confident in like, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to pray. I don't have to come up with content by myself. I don't have to try and figure out what to pray for. Like I'm just going to use this and pray. But also to give students a community of prayer warriors all over the country who look like them, talk like them, are in the same situations that they're in, who are praying unified for the same things all over the country. And so our entire ministry is prayer. That is all we're about. We believe, and we've seen it through history and through the Bible, that prayer precedes revival every single time. And so we're seeing moves of God happen on campuses right now. We're seeing students give their lives to Jesus, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I think what's important to understand is we're seeing these things because there is a nameless and faceless group of young people who are saying, it's okay if you never know who we are. We see a need and we know we can't solve the problem on our own. So we're going to show up and we're going to pray. And what I love about the prayer movement that's happening on campuses is it is the students you would never think would do this are the ones doing it. Like, it's not always the super outgoing students. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's the students who are really shy, who are like, I don't ever want to stand up on a stage and preach. I don't ever want to lead worship, but I want to be used by the Lord. And I can stand in the back hallway of my campus and pray with some friends and then watch the Lord do what only he can do. And it's the coolest thing ever, I think, to watch young people be like, "Oh, this is something I could do." And it's scary in the sense of my social status might be on the line, but it's not difficult. It's actually really simple. I go and I ask him. And so we just want to help students pray. That's our literally our whole entire mission and movement is to help students pray. There's 67,000 middle and high schools across America. And if there was 15 students on every middle and high school, we would see 1 million middle and high schoolers praying for change for their schools, their nation, and their generation. And obviously the goal is to see prayer change campuses and change our nation. But like, man, what could be transformed if young people actually understood I can talk to the Lord. There's a way we only know him when we talk to him. Like I can't know my friend if I'm not talking to them.
Yeah.
And so there's a way that young people are knowing Jesus because they're praying and they're talking to him. And so that's the goal. We want to help young people pray. And the fruit of that is going to transform campuses as they
Mm,
pray and enter their schools.
yeah. Why? And you alluded to this. Prayer is such a simple thing,
Mhm.
but I think you'd probably agree with me that I think a lot of times we don't utilize this amazing tool that God has given us. Why do you think that's the case?
Oh man, I think the concept is it's such a balance to hold because it's so simple, but it is the most impactful thing we could ever do. And the concept that I'm talking to the creator of the universe can be both scary, but if I don't understand who he is, I'm never gonna come. Like, it feels like I'm talking to a genie in the bottle. It feels like I'm throwing words off a wall. But if I understand and not even understand, but just dare to accept the fact that the creator of the universe actually has his ear bent to the things I want to say to him, and that I can hear him respond to me and receive his heart. But ultimately, I think students shy away from trying is because we don't just have a conversation of, "Hey, this is what prayer is." Like, I think we can often assume that they understand prayer, especially if they're kids that, like, grew up in the youth group, they're coming to church, they're hearing people pray. It's like, "Oh, surely they understand what prayer is." But I think a lot of the times, the only people they hear pray are maybe their parents before dinner, mostly their pastors, and they hear them pray with elaborate words or in a certain way, and they think that has to be what prayer looks like, and they don't feel qualified enough. They don't feel equipped enough. They don't feel like they know enough to pray like that. And so instead of daring to just say like, "Hey, I don't know how to pray," because that can feel embarrassing for them. They're like, "I go to church. I can't tell people I don't know how to pray." I feel like it falls then to us of, "Hey, it's okay that you don't know, and you don't have to ask. I'm not gonna assume that you know. Let's talk about how to pray, and let's just pray together." And I think when they hear older people in their lives or even their peers, honestly, pray in a way that's like, "Oh, that's it?" Like, it's actually you're just talking, like, you I don't have to do anything special. It kind of tears down the walls of like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I this is really simple for me to come," but the concept of prayer is so big that it actually draws me in. And I
Mm.
think that's the balance of it, of like, it's so simple, I'm just talking to him and then listening, but I'm talking to the creator of the universe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he actually desires to talk back. Like,
Mm.
those 2 things being held in tandem is a crazy thing, but I think when young people dare to venture into a place of trying to fathom that, it will spark something in their hearts of like, "Oh, wow, this is really interesting. I wanna try this. I wanna see if this works. I wanna ask him questions and see if I hear him." Like,
Mhm.
and just dare to venture into that relational side of prayer. But I think they need the invitation. I think they need the invitation. They need the permission given by trusted leaders in their life to say, "Hey, this is
Mm.
for you, and it's not scary. It doesn't have to be. Try it." Like, I
Yeah.
think what I've noticed is when young people receive that invitation, they're so much more likely to actually give it a shot and see if
Mm.
the Lord is who he says he is. So,
Yeah. That's good. And we know, we can talk to God anywhere. He
mhm,
he wants to hear from us anytime, anywhere. But I know Claim Your Campus is really big on pushing students to pray on their campuses, whether it be
mhm.
prayer walking their campuses or just in their prayer group, circling up, praying on their campus. What's the importance? Why is it so important to get students praying on their campus?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there is a reality of, like, my prayers are not limited to the space I'm in. If I pray for my campus in my room, the Lord hears and he can answer there, but I think any young person, any person in general who when we walk into a space that's been drenched in prayer, you know. Like, there's something about a space where people have put feet to the ground there and covered it in prayer, that something just feels different. There's just something different about it, and that's really the heart behind it, is that students would make their campuses a place where they are standing there and inviting in the presence of the Holy Spirit to come, and actually standing on the grounds where so much darkness happens, so much bullying happens, so much gossip happens, so much violence happens, and daring to invite the presence of the Lord there, standing as almost a signpost saying, "We are
Mm.
carriers of the Holy Spirit standing here, inviting more of the Holy Spirit to come." And so I think, yeah, there's no boundaries to where the Holy Spirit can move and where the presence of God is. He's everywhere all the time. But I think there's something spiritual that I don't even begin to claim that I understand when people of the presence of God who have accepted Jesus, who are filled with his Holy Spirit, stand in a space and say, "Lord, would you come here and now? And would you fill this space?" And when environments and buildings are filled with prayer, and many prayers have been prayed there, and there's a history of intentional communication with God in that space, there's just something different.
Mm.
I don't know what it is, but there's something different. So that's part of it. And then there's also the part of like when your peers walk into campus and they choose to walk down a certain hall and they see a group of students standing there and praying, they might know what you're doing, they might not, but they might ask questions, and that could be an open door for you to share the gospel or to invite them to prayer group, to pray for them in that moment. And so there's also that side of it too of like if I'm praying in my room for my campus, my prayers aren't any less effective, but there is this side of this is a hidden prayer movement, but the rare off chance that someone chooses to walk into the gymnasium that morning and see what we're doing, and now we get to share the gospel or we get to pray with them is like every bit of a reason why you show up to your campus
Yeah.
to pray. So it's a handful of both of those things at the same time. But yeah, there's something special about spaces that have been covered and drenched in prayer. And so we want to encourage students to show up and stand on the grounds of their campus and take back the territory that the Lord's placed them on.
Mm. And you guys have seen so many things that God has done over the years, specifically when students have done just that. I mean, from your own experience,
Mhm.
but you've heard so many stories. So, what are some of the ways that you've seen God work through your own prayers, but also prayers of other students?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a classic story we tell is Indiana, Marion, Indiana. There was a group of students who chose to show up and pray. And this campus specifically was one of the worst in the entire state. I mean, they were rated an F school. You did not want to send your kids to this school. There was fighting happening every day. Really, really bad environment. And this group of students, 8 students, said, "Hey, we're going to pray." And they were praying for 3 things. They were praying for fighting to stop, for grades to increase, and for bold Christ followers on that campus. And so they started praying. And over the school year, their principal saw what they were doing and called the prayer leader into the office and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing when you're standing in this circle?" And this high schooler got to say, like, "Hey, we're praying. These are the things we're praying for." And the principal looked at him kind of funny and he was like, "You guys have been praying for grades to go up and fighting to stop?" And this kid was like, "Yeah, like that's what we've been praying for." And he was like, "Well, Amante, there have been no fights on the campus since you guys have started praying. And this class, Amonte's class that was praying, he was like, your class is excelling in all of your AP tests like we've never seen before. And by the end of the school year, all of the tests on the campus had actually pushed their school to an A-rated school and pushed them to the number one school for college readiness in the entire state of Indiana. And it was literally because these 8 students were praying. And so then Amonte was like, well, shoot, here's an open door for the gospel to be told. So he shares the gospel with his principal, invites his principal to church. His principal comes to church, brings his family to church. They all give their lives to Jesus and get baptized. And then he goes to his brother. This principal goes to his brother, who happened to be the vice principal of the school, shares the gospel with him, invites his family to church. They all come and they all give their lives to Jesus and get baptized. And so there's now 2 families who have given their lives to Jesus, a school that has bumped from an F school to a number 1 school in college readiness and has seen fighting drastically decrease. And it was because 8 students were just showing up weekly to pray. So we have countless stories like that, but I think some of my favorite have honestly come from this past school year as we've just experienced so much favor with the Lord. CYC sent out a tour team this past year, and we heard stories of a student in Oregon be healed of asthma because there was a group of students who were praying. This kid came to their prayer group and said, "Hey, I have a prayer request. I have asthma." They prayed for him. His asthma was healed. We have stories of Christian community growing drastically on campuses where students thought, "I'm the only student that shows up to pray. I have no friends. There's no other Christians here. Surely if I start this prayer group, no one else is going to come." And they start this prayer group, and all these Christians come out of the woodwork and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know there was any other Christians on our campus, but this one decided to be bold and do something about his faith. And now we all feel the freedom to be bold about our faith and to share Jesus." But I think one of my favorite is from Salt Lake City, Utah. There was a little middle school boy at this rally that we did in Salt Lake City, and he comes to this night of worship, decides to start a prayer group. His friend that had come with him told him he would start it with him. And that night after that prayer rally, that little middle school boy and his dad go on a trip. And they are driving, it's really late. The dad pulls over the car, he says, "Hey, you sit here, I'm gonna sleep for like 30 minutes, we'll drive the rest of the way." He hands him his phone to chill, to hang out, whatever he wants to do. The dad wakes up and he looks over, and this little middle school boy is sitting there praying. And it's been about 30 minutes. And when his son finishes praying, the dad looked at him and he was like, "Hey man, like what are you doing?" And they go on to have the most spiritual conversation this dad ever recollects having with his son. They're talking about prayer, how he was marked by prayer at this prayer rally, and how he cannot wait to go and pray for his school. And that was in February, January, February. And he led the prayer group every single week on his campus and has been marked by prayer, has experienced a very fruitful prayer life in his personal prayer life, but also on his campus because he just chose to show up and say yes and try it with the Lord, and he's been marked by prayer. This little middle school boy. A similar story in Texas. There was a FCA for middle schoolers in Texas, and me and my team had gone out to visit. We shared about Claim Your Campus with them, and they just got marked by prayer and have been showing up weekly to pray. But these middle schoolers in Texas are insane. There are some crazy things happening in middle schoolers in Texas, I'll tell you. But I have never experienced a more holy room than when I walked into that gymnasium in Texas, this random middle school in Texas. And that's why I say, like, It's so important that students show up to pray on their campus and show up to be a light on their campus because their presence and their willingness to step in step with the Holy Spirit on their school campus does shift things. Like it does change their campus. But this group of middle schoolers, before their FCA gatherings now on Wednesdays, their leadership team shows up early and they get in a circle and they get on their knees in their gymnasium and they begin to intercede and pray for their campus. They're just believing for big things in the fall. And I think that's what's cool is it's like, yes, we're seeing campuses change. We have stories of gossip ending on campuses. We have stories of fighting ending. We have stories of people getting baptized and giving their lives to Jesus and community shifting and families getting saved. Like we have crazy stories. But what's beautiful is there is a generation that is falling in love with Jesus in prayer. There's a generation that's actually catching the impact of prayer that in 20 to 30 years, we're going to have principals, we're going to have parents, we're going to have teachers, politicians, business people who understand that the first response forever has to be prayer. It cannot be the last resort that we go to. And so, yeah, we're seeing campuses change, and that's the goal. But ultimately, we're believing that our nation's going to be transformed because a bunch of young people are just understanding I can come to the Lord in prayer in the environment that He's placed me in. Like, I don't have to be 25 years old with a degree in ministry going out to the nations in order to be used by God. Like, I can be used by God right now in my context, in my area, at my age. I just have to step out in faith. And so, that I think for me has been the coolest thing is a generation of young people understanding I can be used by God right now and watching their lives being marked by that for the rest of their lives. So yeah, we've seen crazy things and believing for more crazy things to come. But yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing for me.
That's cool. I love that vision. It's claim your campus, but it's for the purposes of so much beyond the campus. It may start on the campus, but it's going to go so much beyond that. So you guys believe in it so much that you guys did this tour last year where we got to officially meet in person and everything. So tell us about that tour, what that was all about, and if you want to kind of get into what you guys are going to be doing again this fall as you set out to go on another tour.
Yeah, so we a few years ago, I think it was 2024, um, my boss Olivia had come to me, our director, and she had said, "Hey, we're thinking about sending out a team on the road, and I think you need to pray about leading this team." And I was like, "Whoa." Now, flashback 2 years prior, I had been having dreams of, like, leading a team across the country for a few years now, and so I was like, "Okay, like, this might be the answer to that, whatever that was for so long." So I prayed about it, felt like the Lord said, "Yes, you're supposed to go." And so we started dreaming up and planning this 9-month-long tour across 18 states in 21 weeks with 4 young adults, saying, "Hey, we're just gonna go. We're just gonna travel, and we're gonna intentionally meet students where they're at. We're going to plug in deep to communities. We're gonna build relationships with pastors and ministry leaders. We're gonna visit youth groups and Christian clubs and share the heart of prayer and invite young people into this movement." And yeah, we could just continue to post, we could do Zoom calls, but there's something intentional about actually showing up in their context and saying, "Hey, we're coming to hear where you're at and meet you there," and understand the context even with which we're calling them to pray in. And so in August of this past year, me and 3 other young adults took off on the road. For the first leg, we were out for 3 months. We traveled the Northwest down through California, went over to Washington, D.C. for a little bit, came back to California, trekked up to Michigan and Ohio, and just saw the Lord do amazing things. Like, we were so extraordinarily blown away by everything we experienced. Like, I've it's funny, since getting off of tour, I've had people ask me like, "Well, what did you do in rooms where no students responded?" Like, and it genuinely that never happened. Like, we were
Mm.
we were in rooms like, the smallest youth group we had was 1 student, and the largest youth group we had was 500 students. And in both spaces and the spectrum in between, there was always students responding and saying, "Yeah, we'll do this. We're gonna show up to pray." And it just felt so much like the Lord's faithfulness saying, "Hey, you've gone. You've responded to my call to go, and I want you to actually see the way I've been preparing these students' hearts the way I've been ministering to them and the way that they're hearing from me right now to actually go. And so in the second leg, we went through the Southwest, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and then spent a good chunk of time in Texas. And same thing, like just saw the Lord do more than we could have imagined. And it will forever blow me away, I think, the extent of what the Lord allowed us to see. Like we were going to a place where CYC was not super known. Like we chose to do the first tour in a part of the country where we had very few students praying. Like I think there was three or four prayer groups across the whole western part of the country before we went on the road. And so we understood kind of the environment we were walking into as far as like just CYC being known and who we are being known and the work that would come with that. But I think what blew us away was like we were ready to go out and plant seeds and not see the fruit. And the Lord was like, no, you're going to see the fruit. Like
Mhm.
I've actually been planting seeds and watering seeds.
Mm.
And now you're going to go, you're going to see the beginning of what I'm doing here. And so it's just been so exciting. I think watching the momentum, honestly, like this ministry's been around for 23 years and it's been a grind for 23 years. And Jeff and Olivia would tell you, like, there was many years in that time frame where it felt like they were trying to convince people that prayer was important and prayer for campuses was important. And it really feels like we're walking in the faithfulness of our founder Jeff's like longevity with his yes in this, of his continued yes to the Lord when it felt like people weren't understanding, students weren't grasping it and running with it. And now we're sitting with a generation that is ready and it feels like we're walking in the grace of God over Jeff's continued yes and his longevity to this call, which is just such a blessing. It's like, man, I walked into this 5 years ago and I get to step into the faithfulness and the longevity of someone else's yes and the favor that comes with that. And so it's blown me away, honestly, what the Lord has done in this tour. And so through what we were seeing, the Lord actually opened the door for us to send out two teams this next year and to do two tours next year. So this fall, we're sending out two teams on the road that will travel to 20 states each. So we're going to hit 40 states in this next year, which is insane. We're headed back to some states we visited last year, which I'm so excited about, specifically like Southwest, a little bit in the Northwest. But we're headed back to some states and we're going to visit parts of the country this year that were a little bit more well known. And so we're really expectant for what the Lord has in store over this next school year as we send out these teams who are of young people who are saying like, yeah, young people need to be praying. And we've seen prayer change our lives and change our campuses. And we're going to go now and call our peers to do the same. And so we're so excited for what's to come. 40 states, 20,000 miles between the two teams. And I told Olivia so many times, like, we got to rename this tour. We keep going way over and for these tours. We gotta think of a new name. But yeah, we're excited to send the 10,000 mile tour out again and watch what the Lord's gonna do, what he's gonna do this
Mm.
year. So
Wow. So I'm sure at this point, hopefully, youth leaders are thinking, this is great. I want to get involved. I want to get my students involved. Maybe want to see where you're coming on the tour, if you guys can stop by or find out other resources that you guys have. How can they do all that?
yeah, our website's a great place to start. Claimyourcampus.com. On there, we'll tell you all the resources, all the options, how to get the prayer walk guide, how to get prayers started in your youth group, even how to launch this out of your youth group. And there's also information on there about the 10,000 mile tour, what it is, why we do it, where we're going this next year, how to get involved, all of that stuff. So, website's the best place, or social media, following us on social media, reaching out to us on social media. Claim Your Campus is our username for Instagram and Facebook, and reaching out to us there if you want to get involved, if you want to have a conversation with someone from our team. That's a great place to reach out, or email us at info@claimyourcampus.com and we'll set up a Zoom call and chat more about what this can look like. But we have so many resources. We have a whole Google Drive of free resources for youth pastors who are saying, hey, I want to launch this in my youth group with my students and I want to help them feel equipped and prepared. There's a whole Google Drive available to youth pastors on the website under free resources. So that's a great place to go as well. But yeah, it's super simple. The website's the best place to go, and then reaching out either email or through Instagram or Facebook. And we have grown this ministry very relationally. So we're big relationship people. And so if youth pastors want to get involved and want to be encouraged by our team, there's so many avenues to do that by, and we would love to be a part and hear even what's happening as they launch this and they have their students praying, how their students are being impacted, how their community is being impacted, all the things. We love stories.
One of the biggest things that I love about Claim Your Campus, of course, other than what you guys do, is your heart behind it, because it's not any sort of extra program you need to run, and it's not going to be any sort of competition with any other ministry. Like, you can come alongside all these other things that you're doing. You're empowering students to go and do what God's already called them to do. And so, like, don't think of, oh, I got to run this extra thing, or I've got to decide, oh, do I want to support FCA and Young Life or Claim Your Campus? No, that's not the question at all. It's just more like, how do you get your students to pray? Here's some great resources to make it happen, empower them, and see God work.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to give you an opportunity just to speak encouragement to those who are listening. Whatever God's maybe laid on your heart, you got an audience of youth leaders who are listening to you today, and what's God sharing with you to share with them in terms of encouragement?
Yeah, I would just say give your students space to hear your authentic prayer life with the Lord. I think when I look back on my experience in youth ministry and even as a young adult and growing in prayer, the most impactful thing to me was not all of the books to read, all of the things to do. The most impactful thing for me was to hear adults in my life who I respected, who I held in high regard, who were pouring into my life to hear them pray and to hear what their actual prayer life sounded like with the Lord. And so I would say let your students hear some of the most real prayers you have and what it sounds like. I think it can be so easy, and I fall victim to this sometimes, but I think it can be so easy being a preacher or a leader and kind of letting your preacher voice transition over to your prayer voice when you pray from a stage. But I think that can be harmful to students sometimes. I think there has to be a separation of those two things, that when I pray, I'm no longer talking to the room, I'm talking to the Lord, and you're gonna hear what it sounds like for me to talk to the Lord. And so that's the encouragement I would give, is if your students feel uninterested, if they feel like they're not paying attention, it's okay. It's alright. They're middle schoolers, they're probably not paying attention to most things, but let them hear you pray, because that will stick with them more than any words that come out of your mouth, more than anything you can say, for them to hear your raw, authentic prayer life come out when you pray. That will change everything. And if you don't have that, I would say go for it. Have the prayer life with the Lord, because I think it transitions. You can hear it. You can hear it when you pray, what that looks like, and each of us have an individual relationship with the Lord. So let your students hear you pray. Let them know what that sounds like, and feel the invitation in that, even to just talk to the Lord. And the simplest form that it is, and the most unimpressive form that it is, let them hear you pray.
Mm, that's so good. And I think it's something, yeah, like you said, even as leaders within the church, we we sometimes probably overlook that. Uh,
Yeah.
Oddly enough, we probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Aubrey, I know that people are going to want to connect with you more. So, how can people do that? How can they find you online, ask you more questions, maybe some follow up questions, hear more stories, but also maybe share a little bit about your new music that's also coming out too?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, my Instagram's Aubrie Kimbrough, so that's a great place to reach out. My email is aubrey@claimyourcampus.com. It's a great place to reach out. But yeah, I am excited for this next season of life. I've had an interesting young adult experience. I didn't go away to college. I did school online, and I traveled in ministry, and then when I graduated, I did more traveling with ministry, and probably the Lord's opened up more doors for this young 22-year-old than should have been allowed, but we've just been stepping with the Lord. And about halfway through tour, I went through a really hard season. I went through some loss and had to carry grief and loss in the midst of leading this amazing tour and leading young leaders on the road and preaching each week and all of the things that come with that, and wrestling with the Lord in grief the way that we do when we experience that. And had an encouragement at church that the Lord was gonna give me songs in that season that would give language to the things of my heart that I didn't know how to say or pray to the Lord. Contrary to popular beliefs, sometimes even leaders don't know how to pray. That's kind of where I was at. I was like, "Lord, I don't know how to talk to you right now about these things," and had gotten this word, and she said, "He's gonna give you these songs first, and in another season, they're gonna minister to other people's hearts who are either going through grief and need to have language of their hearts, or who have gone through grief, and the Lord's gonna invite them actually to remember who he was in that season for them." And so spent a lot of that second leg of tour in my individual time with the Lord writing these songs. And it was the crazy experience of my life, crazy, crazy moments with the Lord, but have actually, the Lord's just given grace and favor and open doors. And I'm going to start releasing music actually this week. So June 12th, my first single comes out, and it's crazy and it's going to be on everything. But yeah, thanks for letting me talk about that. I could
Yeah.
honestly talk about that entire experience for so long because it actually blows my mind when I think about it. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for that to be out in the world and for people to connect with the Lord in that and ask hard questions that sometimes it feels like we can't ask to the Lord, but also be reminded of who he is even in the midst of that. So I'm really excited. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm guessing that you'll talk about it on your social media, continue to talk about it, but is it going to be available on most streaming platforms and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah, all streaming platforms. So
Cool.
anywhere you stream music, you can find it. So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, Aubrie, it has been fantastic to get to know you, to now call you a friend and a partner in ministry, and get to see what God's doing and hear more about what God's doing through you and your ministry. And one thing that seems to be pretty evident as I hear your story and hear more of your story today is there's so many times where, we're you're just being obedient and not really knowing the big picture. And then God reveals more of that big picture later. And so we just pray that God will continue to do that through your ministry and continue to bless all of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate that.
I hope this episode was both informative and inspiring for you. If so, please take a moment to leave us a positive rating on your podcast app and then share this with other student ministry leaders you know. You may not realize it, but those two things really help us to keep getting on great guests like Aubrie and others. So thanks in advance for doing that. And if you'd like to go beyond that and support the making of this podcast and my ministry with National Network of Youth Ministries, you can make a one-time or a monthly donation at nnym.org/Steve Cullum. While this podcast is free, it does take some resources to make it happen. So thanks for your prayers and consideration of becoming a financial partner. Summer is cruising along, and I know many of you at the time this episode is releasing are right in the middle of your camps or mission trips. I pray that you're having an amazing time and that God is working in huge ways within your ministry. In fact, I'd love to hear some stories about what God is doing. Could you send them to me at studentministryconnection@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at studentministryconnection. And also, if you have stories of God doing great things in your schools because students have committed to prayer on their campus, please share those as well. On top of that, if you haven't adopted your local school, head over to adoptaschool.com to sign up for free to adopt your local school, and then begin to pray for it and look for ways to bless that school as an individual, as a youth group, as a church, or as a network. And if you're looking for a speaker for your next youth group event or training, be sure to check out youthmenhub.com/speakerhub for a great list of available speakers. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Student Ministry Connection. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube so you don't miss future episodes. And until next time, be sure to stay connected and may God bless your ministry.